remember, to save all COD charges, send check or money order or use your credit card.
This is CNN.
A case of stomach flu. President Bush collapses in Japan shortly after holding talks aimed at opening up trade. And despite a killing and a ban, more demonstrations in the former Soviet Republic of Georgia. To our viewers in the United States and around the world, this is the International Hour. I'm Frank Sesno. Catherine Cryer is off today. There is arguably no one in the world who is more closely watched than the President of the United States, whose health and well-being are so meticulously safeguarded, followed, and reported. So it's hardly surprising that when President Bush took ill during a state dinner in Tokyo, for a moment, many held their breath. The moment passed. Mr. Bush is recuperating and expected to resume his schedule with only minor changes. The story now from CNN White House correspondent Mary Tillotson, traveling with the President in Japan.
After 9 frenzied days on the road from Sydney to Osaka, President Bush grew nauseated, vomited, and collapsed in his chair Wednesday night at a Tokyo dinner party hosted by Japanese Prime Minister Miyazawa. The president was examined on the spot by his personal doctor, Burton Lee. Lee's diagnosis, an attack of intestinal flu, not a recurrence of the heart problem that Mr. Bush experienced early last year because of his thyroid condition. A melee erupted as Japanese security guards tried to prevent American reporters from seeing Mr. Bush abruptly leave the dinner.
Are you all right, Mr. Bush?
Come on. No.
What happened, sir? What happened, Mr. Bush?
Though he looked drawn and disheveled, the president told reporters he felt good. As the motorcade raced through Tokyo carrying Mr. Bush back to his guest quarters at Akasaka Palace, Prime Minister Miyazawa read a note to his guests about the departed guest of honor.
Foreign Ministry called, the president is fine, resting at Akasaka Palace.
Presidential spokesman Marlin Fitzwater told reporters Mr. Bush was given medicine to calm his nausea, then put to bed for the night, with no special monitoring of his condition.
Nothing extraordinary that Dr. Lee does not feel there's any special monitoring required. All aspects of the examination indicate that it is a common case of the flu.
Mrs. Bush, who stayed at the dinner, made light of the president's illness and hasty exit.
But I'm beginning to think it's the ambassador's fault. He and George played the Emperor and the Crown Prince in tennis today, and they were badly beaten.
When Fitzwater was asked if being felled by the flu might persuade Mr. Bush to slow down, he said nope, the president likes staying busy. Mr. Bush will skip an early morning breakfast meeting Thursday, but otherwise, says Fitzwater, he'll stick to his schedule the rest of this trip. Mary Tillotson, CNN, Tokyo.
The president is receiving get-well wishes from around the world. Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak sent a message to the White House offering Mr. Bush his best wishes for a speedy recovery. Turkish President Turgut Özal and British Prime Minister John Major sent similar messages. Mr. Major tried to ease concerns about the president's condition.
There's no need to be concerned about President Bush. We've been in touch with the White House. He played a strenuous game of tennis in the afternoon. He felt a little unwell after dinner. He's walking. As far as I understand, he's feeling a little unwell, but that's all.
How did you hear about it?
I heard about it from number 10 about 45 minutes ago.
What details have you got about it?
Well, the details I've just given you. He played a strenuous game of tennis in the afternoon. He felt a little unwell during dinner, a little unwell after dinner, and that really is all there is to it.
No cause for concern?
In Russia, the television program Vesti wished President Bush a quick recovery. Vice President Dan Quayle went ahead with a planned campaign trip of his own to New Hampshire today. His spokesman says there was no talk of transferring power to the vice president. Former President Richard Nixon has a good idea how Mr. Quayle may have felt when he heard about the president's illness. In an interview with Larry King, Mr. Nixon spoke about when he was vice president and his boss, Dwight Eisenhower, had a heart attack.
For a vice president, you don't think about, well, gee, I'm going to be president pretty soon, or I may be, and what am I going to do? But you really think about, we just hope that the president gets well. You're concerned about, that's the way I felt at least.
You don't give any thought that it could be you?
Not at that point. Later on, you can be sure that as the media descends on you and as the political people descend on you, in fact, you can be sure at that time, the moment President Eisenhower had a heart attack, I heard from people that I had never heard for before. And once he got well, I didn't hear from him again. That's the way it goes.
All of that conversation with Richard Nixon can be seen tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, right here on Larry King Live. Before he fell ill, Mr. Bush had begun trade talks with Prime Minister Kiichi Miyazawa. The two men said there would be a strategy for world growth aimed at stimulating the U.S. economy and the Japanese consumer economy so that it will buy more goods. Senior White House correspondent Charles Bierbauer has that story.
Handshake.
President Bush came to Japan with the declared goal of creating American jobs. He thinks he's done that, though he cannot say how many or where they'll be.
I don't know that I'll ever be able to say I've gotten it done totally, but I will be able to go home and say we've made a very good start on jobs, jobs, jobs.
In fact, U.S. and Japanese officials were locked in what were described as severe negotiations about targets for increasing U.S. auto imports. The Japanese are resisting further concessions. White House spokesman Marlin Fitzwater says, "We're pressing hard, they're feeling the pinch." The U.S. has made some threatening noises.
A collapse of an open world trading system would perhaps hurt Japan more seriously than any other major industrial nation.
It's the auto trade that has become symbolic of the U.S.-Japanese difficulties. The cars the U.S.'s big three say they could sell here if Japan would change its trade rules. The Japanese say the American auto industry's problems are in Detroit, not Tokyo, and even the president doesn't argue with that.
I think to the degree there's inefficiency in production, any place, the producer ought to take a hard look at that. We must be able to compete.
President Bush brought along nearly a score of U.S. executives to back his claim for a bigger slice of the Japanese market.
Such a broad spectrum of industries ranging from potato chips to computer chips.
And on a broad scale, Japan agreed to put out a budget that would stimulate consumer demand, while Bush intends to use his State of the Union address later this month to kick the U.S. economy back in gear. Just how was not spelled out here.
The thing that's significantly different is the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Japan have put their names to a growth strategy.
President Bush concedes he's not been able to gain access to some key Japanese markets, such as rice. Bush says he's making headway, but he's not likely to head home with any immediate jobs bonanza. Charles Bierbauer, CNN, Tokyo.
And still ahead on this International Hour, defiant demonstrations in Georgia. One day after bullets silenced a similar protest, supporters of the Republic's ousted president on the streets again. Stalked by starvation in St. Petersburg, a city that once survived a 900-day siege, faces the specter of hunger once again.
This is regular. This is better. This Bayer is regular. For headaches, Anacin is better. Why better? Regular Bayer has one ingredient. Anacin has two. A pain medicine plus a second ingredient that makes it work better. Get Anacin. Get better.
I hate to break it to you, John, but it's going to be a big one this time. I'll give you a minute. Tough break. His first major repair, and it comes just 2 months after his manufacturer's warranty ran out. Worst part is he could have avoided this bill by signing up for Geico's mechanical breakdown insurance back when he bought his new car, or any time before it hit 11,000 miles. I suppose people think all extended warranties are too expensive, but with Geico, you get longer coverage than many car dealers' extended warranties at savings of 30 to 50%. You can even choose between 2 coverage plans for the same low price. And you can still see your favorite mechanic. So take a word of friendly advice. Call Geico today.
For longer coverage at savings of 30 to 50%, it's mechanical breakdown insurance from Geico. Sign up within 11 months or 11,000 miles of purchasing your new car or light truck. Call now for free information.
What can I tell you, John? You should have had the coverage.
Tonight, thrust into the spotlight of Iran-Contra, now conservative guest host Oliver North plays the right field to Mike Kinsley's left in The Crossfire. Tonight, 7:30 Eastern on CNN.
In the Republic of Georgia, demonstrators defied the threat of more gunfire to take to the streets again. And the man they're rallying around, ousted President Ziad Gamsakhurdia, is standing defiant as well. Mr. Gamsakhurdia is seeking refuge in an Armenian border town after escaping the besieged parliament building. He insists he is still the president and has no intention of resigning. Those words are echoing in the Georgian capital of Tbilisi. Stefan Kotsonis is there, and we apologize in advance for some video difficulties in his report.
I love my president! I very love my president!
For a second day in a row, supporters of the deposed President Gamsakhurdia held a rally in the capital to call for his return and to denounce those who overthrew him. But the turnout of about 1,000 was much smaller than the day before. The military council, now in control of the capital, had banned the rally. But they did not send their gunmen out to break up the gathering. They said they didn't like it, but there would be no repeat of the violence of the day before.
Of course we want them to behave differently, but we overthrew a dictatorship. They are allowed their opinions. We won't suppress them anymore.
Across the border in Armenia, the deposed president swore he would continue to fight those who overthrew him. He said he is still the constitutionally elected head of state and would mobilize world opinion against the men who now control Tbilisi, men he calls terrorists and mafiosi. But while the president's supporters rallied, many others went downtown to marvel at the destruction, to see what the powerful weapons of war did to their city's monuments. The cleanup began, but it has barely begun. Those who like the new order dismiss Gamsakhurdia's supporters. They say 70 years of dictatorship have made these people gullible.
Well, I want to tell you that their mind is very much damaged. They still don't understand. They still don't understand what kind of man was Gamsakhurdia.
Others say only a fanatical fringe support Gamsakhurdia. And they say he has so many loyal women followers, not because he's a Democrat, but because of his good looks. Back at the demonstration, people say they know exactly what they like about their man, and it isn't his looks.
Don't think that we're fanatics, that we're only for Ziad. No, we're for the Constitution and a constitutional resolution of the question.
Some of the demonstrators say Gamsakhurdia had his faults, but should have been allowed to serve out his term.
The people elected him. The people have to remove him through elections.
The people here, mostly middle-aged, mostly women, are deeply suspicious. All they know is they got their election, they got their president, they got a constitution. They say they don't want anybody tampering with that. But it's still hard to tell if most Georgians agree with them. Stefan Kotsonis, CNN, Tbilisi.
A growing dispute over control of the former Soviet Union's Black Sea Fleet. Ukraine has claimed the large and powerful fleet, but the fleet commander has rejected Ukrainian control. So has Russian President Boris Yeltsin. Both he and the commander say the Black Sea Fleet should remain under one command, serving the entire Commonwealth. Elsewhere in Russia, the city of St. Petersburg, bracing for what could well be a dismal winter. Food supplies are low and many stomachs are near empty. But as CNN's Christiane Amanpour reports, hunger isn't new to the city that has been at the forefront of history and suffering.
This city knows all about hunger. An eternal flame burns beside the mass graves of those who died of starvation during the Nazis' 900-day siege of Leningrad in World War II. The young come to pay their respects. Those old enough to remember are afraid.
I think it will be really bad. Can you imagine potatoes being 3 times more expensive? Even if we eat only bread and potatoes, we can hardly make ends meet.
Outside the metro stations and at the markets, St. Petersburg's new paupers are selling off their own belongings, clothes, trinkets, and even a toilet seat, trying to raise a few extra rubles. City officials admit they won't make it through the winter or even the next 30 days without help.
We have only half the food supplies we need for the coming month. We're expecting aid from abroad, and we're very thankful for whatever we get.
Handouts, large and small, are being delivered to the hardest hit, to an old woman who must support herself and her invalid son. She's pathetically grateful for this gift from Germany. She says it'll last her all winter. In the stores, the prices are high and there's not much to buy. Outside, the lines last well after dark.
I spend my whole day working hard, and I come here and there is nothing. I've been to 3 stores already. It's intolerable.
It's going through hard times now, but this city has a remarkable history as the center of change and new beginnings. It's where Russian imperialism died and Soviet communism was born. And now it's trying to lead a capitalist revival, trying to turn itself into a haven for international investment. City officials want to turn St. Petersburg into a mecca for culture and tourism. They are giving her beautiful old face a lift, setting up joint ventures, about 500 so far, trying to sell off state stores, restaurants and factories to private investors, and trying to change the work ethic.
The reason we live so badly is because we work so badly. As soon as we start working better, our life will be better.
But even under the best of circumstances, officials say it'll take at least 10 to 15 years before stability and real economic growth take hold. Christiana Manfour, CNN, St. Petersburg.
Cuba says late last month it arrested 3 Miami men who traveled by sea to carry out what Havana claims were terrorist attacks inspired by the Central Intelligence Agency. Cuba stopped short of citing direct links between the suspects and the U.S. government, but it says the men were planning attacks against Cuba based on unspecified CIA tactics. Cuba says the men were heavily armed and claims they confessed to membership in an unidentified terrorist group accused by Havana of attacking the Cuban mainland in the past. Winston Churchill reportedly had alternative ideas about taking the fight to the Nazis in World War II. An upcoming BBC television biography said Britain's top wartime prime minister had serious doubts about the D-Day invasion of Normandy. The show's producer says Churchill thought the landings on the heavily defended beaches would be too bloody and asked a top aide to draw up an alternative plan. The BBC program says Churchill envisioned Portugal as the launching point for the Allied offensive, but that plan reportedly was scrapped because of strong objections from his military chiefs. And coming up, remembering the 5 European community officials killed yesterday in Yugoslavia, the latest in a long list of Civil War casualties there. And Palestinian delegates travel to Amman to meet up with their Jordanian counterparts before heading to Washington for the next round of peace talks.
Across the world, phones are ringing. Who's calling?
Hello, Mom. It's Jonathan. I'm getting married.
People who are saving money with the AT&T Reach Out World Plan. They're calling friends and family in over 50 countries and areas, talking longer and saving an average of 20%. Even if you spend only $12 a month on international calls, sign up and start saving. Whether you call across the Atlantic, the Pacific, to Canada, or to Mexico.
Did you see the phone bill?
Yeah. Hola, te adora.
AT&T makes it easy to save on the calls you already make. You'll even get a 5% discount on AT&T state-to-state calls made from your home. Call 1-800-445-3231 and sign up now. Because with this plan, when a loved one is far away, you can go ahead and call.
I miss her, too. We could call her in Tokyo, huh? You want to call Grandma?
And the longer you talk, the more you'll save. No need to wait for the right time to call either. You have over 120 hours a week to save. The AT&T Reach Out World Plan. With these savings and all the quality and service you expect from AT&T, it's our best value in international calling.
I'll call you. We'll call you.
So before you make your next international call 1-800-445-3231 and start saving an average of 20%. All for only $3 a month. Across the world, phones are ringing. Who's calling? Soon it may be you. Sign up now for the AT&T Reach Out World Plan. Call 1-800-445-3231.
The European community temporarily suspended its monitoring operations in Yugoslavia today, one day after a federal warplane shot down an EC helicopter, killing all 5 peace observers on board. A service was held in Zagreb for the slain officials. They are the first EC personnel to die in the 6-month war. Federal leaders admit a government plane fired a missile at the European chopper moments after it crossed into Yugoslav airspace from Hungary. The EC says it won't resume its monitoring activities until there's a full investigation. The United Nations Security Council condemned the incident, but still plans to send its 50 military observers to the area. Yugoslavia's defense minister also stepped down today. His support for the UN ceasefire angered some Serbian military leaders in Croatia. The government says his resignation was approved last month and has nothing to do with yesterday's missile attack. Round 3 of the Mideast peace talks may get off the ground after all. Today, Palestinian representatives flew to Amman to join the Jordanian half of their delegation. But as the Palestinians left Jerusalem, violence erupted during a demonstration against Israel's decision to deport 12 Palestinians. CNN's Charles Hoff has the story.
The Palestinian delegation to the Washington peace talks departed Jerusalem Wednesday morning, and they say they expect to talk substance with the Israelis. This time in a meeting room, not in the hallway.
We have already suggested during the last Washington meeting that we are willing to have either a meeting of the 3 heads, after which we break up into 2 tracks, or a limited meeting of both delegations with the Israelis, after which we will break up.
The Palestinians left under a cloud of violence. In Gaza, 1 Palestinian was killed and 20 others injured when Israeli forces used tear gas and live ammunition to break up a demonstration against deportations. The head of Israeli forces suggested that the Jewish state alter its deportation policy, saying that if deportations were for a limited period of time, the international community may be more accepting of the Israeli policy. Palestinian attorney Jonathan Katzab says the Israelis would use this policy to deport thousands of Palestinians rather than dozens.
It reduces the impact on individuals, it increases the impact on nations, but it does not vary the basic illegality of the act of deportation.
On the streets of both East and West Jerusalem, people are still hoping for peace, but are not optimistic.
All of them, they're just killing time. The Palestinians, the Israeli, the Americans, they're killing time.
There's so many obstacles that are being thrown in the way that a lot of people around here are not holding their breath for too long, but we're all hoping.
The Israeli delegation is still waiting in Washington for the Arabs to arrive. Israeli spokesman Ehud Gol says they are ready to talk substance with the Palestinians.
We, on our side, will do everything in our capacity to end the corridor talks immediately and move to the room in order, as you put it, in order to move into substance.
The Palestinians and the other Arab delegations could arrive in Washington by Thursday. The talks could begin as early as Sunday or perhaps Monday, but the Israelis say they'll have to return to Israel by the end of the week. Charles Hoff, CNN, Jerusalem.
A Palestinian man was convicted today in Greece of a 1982 bomb attack on a Pan Am jetliner. Mohammed Rashid was sentenced to 18 years in prison. He immediately filed an appeal. The bomb exploded while the jet was flying from Tokyo to Hawaii. A Japanese boy was killed, 15 others were injured. Rashid was arrested in Athens in 1988 on a tip from the U.S. government. His attorney says good behavior could cut the prison term to 7 years. And still to come, on its 80th anniversary, the African National Congress, celebrating its transition from outlawed guerrilla group to powerful political organization. And El Salvador's rebel soldiers contemplate what life will be like without a war to fight. Stay with us.
Tonight, former President Richard Nixon talks about the end of the Cold War, the controversy over JFK, the upcoming presidential race, and more. Richard Nixon tonight on Larry King Live, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Your attention, please. The 631 will be delayed.
Get some coffee?
No. This gives me a chance to call my broker.
Now?
Sure.
My broker's never in this early.
You have to keep to his schedule?
Trading decisions happen round the clock. That's why so many active investors choose Fidelity Brokerage Services. Fidelity has experienced brokers available 24 hours a day to place your trades. Plus, you'll save as much as 76% on stock and option commissions. Call this number now for your free Fidelity Brokerage Fact Kit.
That's right, 500 shares at the market price at the open. Great. A couple more things I want to cover.
And find out about Fidelity's fast on-time performance nationwide with significant savings. For your free Fact Kit, call Fidelity Brokerage Services at 1-800-624-4900, a Fidelity Investments company.
There's constipation and there's constipation.
Oh, yeah.
When it's this bad, take it to the max. New Maximum Relief Formula X-Lax pills with 50% more X-Lax medicine for maximum relief.
Oh, yeah.
Take it to the max.
Islands of fire, waters of mystery. Sail with Jacques Cousteau on a journey to Indonesia, the Devil's Orchards. 10 Eastern, Sunday night, exclusively on TBS.
El Salvador's 12-year-old civil war officially is supposed to end next week when government and rebel negotiators sign the historic peace accord they drafted just before New Year's Day. The accord calls for the demobilization of the guerrilla army and a restructuring of government troops. As CNN's Ronnie Lovler reports, some guerrilla units are already making plans for a peaceful future.
It's a sign of the changing times. This tractor is clearing a road that passes by a guerrilla camp in Guazapa, a rebel stronghold just an hour's drive from San Salvador. As much as the negotiations at the United Nations, the government-funded roadwork in guerrilla turf is a demonstration that peace is on the way. Most guerrilla units are just hanging out now while waiting for final details of the ceasefire to be arranged. Or as one commander jokingly put it, you could say we're confined to barracks. The mood in this guerrilla camp is relaxed and low-key. One group got out a deck of cards and sat down to play a few hands. One young combatant had another girl style her hair. Some took a break at a nearby stream to refresh themselves with a quick swim, wash their clothes, or simply to bathe. With a ceasefire set to take effect February 1st, guerrilla fighters are now looking to their futures. Many have had very little formal education, and they want to go to school. Their goals and dreams vary. 25-year-old Gabino, a 12-year veteran of the war, says he would like to be a driver. Daniel, now 26, who became a guerrilla in his teens, thinks he wants to study law. Evelyn says she would like to be a teacher. But the rebels are also mothers and fathers, and they are thinking about their children. 25-year-old Ruth and her guerrilla husband have 2 children that his mother is raising.
What I want after the work is to work and raise our children so that they can enjoy what we struggled for all these years.
In essence, what the guerrillas look forward to is the same thing as most Salvadorans: a chance to live in peace and tranquility, and to give their children the opportunity to grow up without war. Ronnie Lovler, CNN, Guazapa, El Salvador.
And ahead on CNN World Report, thousands of Germans look back at a darker past as they inspect files of the secret police.
International Hour continues, followed by Early Prime after this local commercial break. Next on CNN.
I needed a change of scenery, so I left Wall Street for 2 years and got a job in Africa with the Peace Corps. We've started a development program for local businessmen. You won't find them on the exchange, but we have our share of success stories. Helping Jomo get a loan to motorize his fishing boat has tripled his catch and meant more food and jobs for everyone. It's proved to me that investing in good people provides great dividends.
Peace Corps, the toughest job you'll ever love.
Today, Tech-Tret Shoe Corporation announced a major retail expansion in 25 U.S. cities.
When I see a company that looks like a good investment, I check it out myself. At at Charles Schwab. I can get quotes, financial news, and when I make a trade, commission savings.
For free information about Schwab services, call toll-free 800-257-1257.
This is CNN.
Checking our top stories at this hour, President Bush receives get-well wishes from leaders around the world after his collapse at a state dinner in Tokyo Wednesday night. Administration officials say it's nothing serious, just a case of stomach flu. President Bush is sleeping now, but plans to press on with trade talks on Thursday. Mr. Bush discussed the issue with Prime Minister Miyazawa and business leaders early Wednesday. Aides say that while he'll skip a breakfast meeting with business leaders early in the morning, he plans to stick to a full schedule of meetings for the rest of the day. In Tbilisi, Georgia, on Wednesday, hundreds of people defy warnings from the ruling military council and rally in support of ousted President Zviad Gamsakhurdia. He's in hiding in Armenia, insisting he remains the president of the former Soviet Republic. Armenian leaders have not said whether they'll grant Mr. Gamsakhurdia permanent asylum. And for a look at what's ahead and what's been happening on the day's financial news, we go to Bill Hartley at the Business News Desk in New York. Bill?
Thanks, Frank. We are in the final half hour of trading on Wall Street, and it has been a roller coaster ride today. Investor concerns about the health of the president and the falling overseas markets helped knock the Dow down more than 20 points earlier on. But it's been a wild ride since then. The Dow was up 25 points by midday. Right now, it is back in the minus column. It is down almost 12 points at just under 3,193. Big board volume is quite heavy today. 263 million shares have traded. Broader market is mixed, but the secondary markets are back at record highs. International stocks took a beating. Overnight in Tokyo, the Nikkei average fell more than 3.5%. It has lost more than 1,000 points the last 2 days. In London, the Financial Times 100 share index was down more than 40 points before Wall Street's rebound helped it recover. It finally closed down almost 16 points at 2,467. U.S. dollars holding steady. It had been down earlier following news of the president's illness. It then rebounded. Right now, the dollar's unchanged against the German mark, up 0.75 cents against the British pound, up 2/3 of a yen on the Japanese currency. Supply and demand playing havoc with the oil markets. News that Iraq may soon be allowed to sell oil again is adding to supply fears, and the unseasonably warm winter in the United States has weakened demand. After falling 50 cents a barrel yesterday, the benchmark U.S. crude is down another 82 cents at $17.87 a barrel today. It now stands at its lowest level in a year and a half. And finally, Kevin Maxwell has agreed to appear before the British Parliament. A parliamentary committee is investigating billions of dollars of missing pension funds from the Maxwell empire. Kevin and his brother Ian failed to show last time they were summoned before the committee. This time, Kevin says he will comply with an order to appear at a hearing next Monday. That's the latest in business news. One last check shows the Dow down about 12 points right now. We'll have the closing numbers from Wall Street in less than 1 hour. I'm Bill Hartley reporting from the CNN Business News Desk in New York.
Thanks, Bill. The African National Congress today is celebrating its 80th anniversary and its successes in defeating South Africa's system of apartheid, or racial segregation. During a day-long rally, ANC President Nelson Mandela outlined 2 goals for 1992. He says an interim government should be established in South Africa by mid-year, and he wants a one-person, one-vote election to choose an assembly to rewrite the Constitution and end white minority rule.
Nothing less than a democratically elected constitution-making body will enjoy legitimacy in the eyes of our people and ensure that the overwhelming majority respect the final product. There cannot be any point in setting up an interim government if this principle has not been adopted.
South African President F.W. de Klerk has resisted that demand, saying black and white political groups should negotiate a new constitution before elections are held. When we come back, casualties of war, the cloud of Operation Desert Storm still hanging over one Iraqi city.
How can you tell a raisin nut from an ordinary raisin? Raisin nuts shop in big and tall shops. They are frequently mistaken for dirigibles, and they have a heck of a time hiding behind trees. But the best way to spot a raisin nut is to taste one. Because when you take a fat, juicy raisin and roll it in a nutty coating, it keeps it plumper, makes it extra tasty. The toasted bran flakes and big crunchy almonds help too. For big-time raisin taste, it's Raisin Nut Bran.
You wanna accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative. Tune in to the affirmative, the family channel, yes indeed.
Nobody captures life on the positive side like the Family Channel.
You wanna accentuate the positive, the family channel, yes indeed.
Great recipes start with Campbell's new broccoli cheese soup. Now you're cooking. Good cooking. Cooking. Look for more great recipes Sunday, January 12th in Parade and USA Weekend.
Now you're cooking. Good. There's constipation and there's constipation. Oh, yeah. When it's this bad, take it to the max. New Maximum Relief Formula X-Lax pills with 50% more X-Lax medicine for maximum relief.
Oh, yeah.
Take it to the max.
On CNN Today, open your eyes and take a look. Some people with very poor vision may soon see things more clearly on early prime. Then on Showbiz Today, look at this year's Grammy nominees. All today on CNN.
Early prime comes your way at the top of the hour. Lou Waters with us now with a preview. Lou?
Frank, for our U.S. viewers, we'll go live to New Hampshire, where the Vice President of the United States, Dan Quayle, has been on the campaign trail today. We'll find out how his day has gone. We'll also be switching live to the Detroit Auto Show. We'll check out which cars were good enough to make it onto this year's Best Cars ratings list. And Florida Wildcats pulling Panthers back from the brink of extinction. Join us in about 25 minutes or so at the top of the hour for Early Prime. Frank?
So, word today from Tehran that officials are ready to return 6 civilian airplanes to Kuwait. The Iranian news agency says the president of the UN Aviation Authority inspected the Kuwaiti Airways planes last week in Mashhad. The planes were taken from Kuwait by Iraq during the Gulf crisis and repainted with Iraqi colors. Kuwait has accused Iraq of stealing a total of 12 civilian planes. A top United Nations official paints a bleak picture of hunger and disease in Iraq, just about a year after the Persian Gulf War. He says the UN's requested funds for humanitarian relief will only meet Iraq's most basic needs. The residents of the Iraqi town of Fallujah are still living with the consequences of a tragic mistake during the war. Here's CNN's Rick Salinger.
At first glance, Fallujah today appears a normal town, 60 miles west of Baghdad. Only the name, the Martyrs Market, and the date, February 13th, 1991, give a clue to the chapter of Fallujah in the Gulf War.
Enemy, bloodshed, bloodshed. Why? 131 men killed. Why? Why?
What happened here was a mistake, one that took 131 lives by Iraqi count. Dozens more were wounded. It was late in the afternoon when the destruction came. British Jaguars and Tornadoes were on a mission to bomb a bridge over the Euphrates River, what they considered a vital supply route used by the Iraqis. 4 bombs were dropped. The first hit its mark. 2 others fell into the river. But the 4th veered off course, some 800 yards off course into the center of Fallujah. The plane's video camera recorded the smoke in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. The market was crowded at the time. The Iraqis hurried reporters and cameramen to the scene to show the world what had occurred. After an investigation, the British acknowledged the mistake.
There are obviously veins on the bomb that steer it down the laser cone, homing in on the target, and quite clearly in this case, they were not working.
He said if there were civilian casualties, they were sorry. In a war in which the Allies boasted a pinpoint surgical bombing, what happened here can be likened to a tragic case of malpractice that cost more than 100 lives. Nearly a year later, the buildings have been reconstructed, but not all the evidence of what happened here has been erased. People crowded around us to show us what the Allies' bomb had done to them.
We felt safe because the coalition countries promised not to hit the residential areas and civilians.
Uthman Ali lost his father, brother, and cousin. He says the bomb's margin of error was too great. It must have been deliberate. Many survived the bombing, but lost limbs. Many of them were children. Among them, Abdullah Ali. He lost both his legs. Now he spends most of his time at home in a wheelchair. He says he feels his legs are still with him, but he can't go to school and can't play with his friends. This market has been rebuilt, but the scars still remain. Rick Salinger, CNN, Fallujah, Iraq.
And up next on CNN World Report, Paul Simon gets ready for his South Africa concert tour amid tight security and threats against the singer.
Across the world, phones are ringing. Who's calling?
Hello, Mom. It's Jonathan. I'm getting married.
People who are saving money with the AT&T Reach Out World Plan. They're calling friends and family in over 50 countries and areas, talking longer and saving an average of 20%. Even if you spend only $12 a month on international calls, sign up and start saving. Whether you call across the Atlantic, the Pacific, to Canada, or to Mexico.
Did you see the phone bill?
Yeah. Hola, te adora.
AT&T makes it easy to save on the calls you already make. You'll even get a 5% discount on AT&T state-to-state calls made from your home. Call 1-800-445-3231 and sign up now. Because with this plan, when a loved one is far away, you can go ahead and call.
I miss her, too. We could call her in Tokyo, huh? You want to call Grandma?
And the longer you talk, the more you'll save. No need to wait for the right time to call either. You have over 120 hours a week to save. The AT&T Reach Out World Plan. With these savings and all the quality and service you expect from AT&T, it's our best value in international calling.
I'll call you. We'll call you.
So before you make your next international call 1-800-445-3231 and start saving an average of 20%. All for only $3 a month. Across the world, phones are ringing. Who's calling? Soon it may be you. Sign up now for the AT&T Reach Out World Plan. Call 1-800-445-3231.
Time now for our CNN World Report segment, where we bring you news as reported by broadcasters from around the globe from their perspective. Paul Simon says there are no plans to cancel this weekend's concerts in South Africa. A left-wing political group has taken responsibility for last night's bombing at the offices of Simon's tour promoters. The group wants Simon to get out of the country. We have a report from the South African Broadcasting Corporation.
An explosion ripped through a building housing a sound system company in downtown Johannesburg on Tuesday night, an apparent foretaste of things to come. The militant Azanian People's Organization, AZAPO, which is opposed to the tour, says it was responsible for the attack.
We reserve the right to undertake any kind of action to display our displeasure at what's happening currently in the country, especially in terms of the cultural boycott. We would probably resort to demonstrations, picketing, outside offices, the hotels where Paul Simon will be staying, Ellis Park, etc.
Paul Simon arrived in South Africa just hours ahead of the blast and seemed a bit confused about why he was being targeted.
The negotiations surrounding the tour have been going on for 6 months, so I was really under the impression that everything was understood and agreed upon and fine. And that was the impression that I was given. So I was surprised, yeah.
The crux of the matter is the cultural boycott against South Africa. The ANC says it's over. AZAPO says no. First majority rule and then a return to international sport and music. Final touches are being made to the giant Ellis Park football stadium ahead of the weekend's concerts. Police have restricted attendance well below the capacity of the venue, and they'll be taking no chances with security.
There will be in excess of 800 security personnel on duty on the day, which will include
Our own private security, South African police assistance, South African Defence Force assistance, yes, definitely will be the biggest that we had at Ellisville.
The stadium may be empty now, but come Saturday, 60,000 music fans will be heralding South Africa's re-emergence as an international tour venue. And in spite of the bomb blasts, for Paul Simon fans, there will definitely be no sounds of silence. Anton Enos, SABC, Johannesburg, for CNN World Report.
Since the first of the year, a new law allows German citizens free access to secret files kept on them by the former East German secret police. For decades, the police, known as Stasi, spied on thousands of Germans. The new law helps settle old questions, but it's also causing some unexpected pain. We have this report provided by Germany's Deutsche Welle.
These people want to know the truth. They want to know the names of the spies who secretly reported on the most intimate details of their lives, like this man who is a political prisoner. I didn't come here so much to get revenge, he says. I just want to know how they worked, which I should be able to find out from the information in my file. Archive authorities have already handed out 100,000 application forms for access to the archive. The high level of interest surprised officials, who ran out of forms just 3 days after the law took effect. The law not only gives victims access to their files, but lets them see the names of those who spied against them. Former leading East German opposition figures were the first to get a chance to read their files. He says they are a colorful mixture of very exact, overly precise research, attempts to criminalize the victim, and a blend of superficial, relatively banal information. The East German secret police had an extraordinarily efficient spy apparatus, collecting information on an estimated 6 million people. Flipping through volumes of files can be an instructive, tedious, and shattering experience. One member of the German parliament discovered her husband was a Stasi agent. Some psychologists warn of serious social and personal consequences unless counseling offices for Stasi victims are set up immediately. Despite potential problems, Stasi archive officials say the law is a prerequisite to breaking down the continuing atmosphere of mistrust in the eastern part of Germany. This official says this painful step is necessary to achieve a social climate where it can be said, this was the situation, we know it, we have spoken about it, we have taken consequences, and now we can live with it. Still, truthfulness will not cushion the pain as East Germans discover just who spied on whom, including friends, neighbors, and even family. For CNN World Report, I'm Deidre Berger, Deutsche Welle, Berlin.
And when CNN World Report returns, how smart bomb technology may one day find its way into your automobile. But first, tomorrow's forecast temperatures for selected cities around the globe.
This winter, the cost of heating is surprisingly low, thanks to cream of wheat. Hot, nutritious cream of wheat can help fuel your family all morning long for as little as 10 cents a serving. So keep down the cost of energy with cream of wheat, also available in instant. And turn up the heat for less.
To protect the lives of firefighters, DuPont developed a remarkable fire-resistant fiber for their clothing called Nomex. But perhaps even more remarkable is how it protects those who never even wear it. At DuPont, we make the things that make a difference.
80% of nation on flu alert. Earliest outbreak in 10 years. Severe flu season underway. What will you do? Get serious medicine. Doctors recommend Theraflu. TheraFlu is hot liquid medicine. Strong therapy for flu symptoms. Hot liquid therapy that works fast. What will you do when you get the flu? Doctors recommend TheraFlu. Strong therapy for flu symptoms.
Fairchild's calling from the floor.
Today's business is a high-stakes game. CNN Business News gives you the edge with live reports from Wall Street and the day's business wrap-up every evening on Moneyline. The best business news in the business is on CNN.
The European Commission and the Portuguese cabinet met earlier today to set the agenda for the EC. Portugal has taken over the rotating EC presidency for the next 6 months. Two key issues facing the 12-member community: the war in Yugoslavia and agricultural policy reforms in Europe. More on Europe's agenda now in this report from Portugal's RTP.
Portugal took over the presidency of the European Community on January the 1st at what is considered as a critical time in the 12 nations' march towards economic and political union. Portugal, which joined the EC in 1986, assumes the 6-month presidency for the first time amid the unprecedented challenges posed by the breakup of the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia. This country considers itself to be a pragmatic broker, able to reconcile differences between the community heavyweights. The Portuguese were relieved when the 12 agreed on the outlines of the European Political and Economic Union at the Maastricht Summit, since they will now be free to concentrate on other aspects of EC policy. A budget reform is due to reduce subsidies on overproduction by European farmers and to channel more aid to the EC's poorest member states, producing major changes in the community's spending policies. The Portuguese presidency also plans to define a strategy for the admittance of new members to the EC, clearing most of the remaining obstacles to the creation of a single European market in 1993. It hopes to supervise the definition of a strategy to be approved at the next EC summit in Lisbon in June, allowing the community to open negotiations with Austria and Sweden in the second half of 1992. Portugal has a strong interest in seeing the reforms adopted. Foreign Minister João de Deus Pinheiro recently described them as crucial. But Prime Minister Aníbal Cavaco Silva also wants the EC to extend its vision beyond the maelstrom of Eastern Europe and pay more attention to the third world and its development needs. Portugal was one of the last European countries to relinquish its African and Asian colonies and is a seaward-looking nation far removed from the EC's turbulent eastern frontier. Lisbon shares with London the wish to retain a strong link with the United States through the NATO alliance, but unlike the British, to whom it surrenders the rotating community presidency in July, it wholeheartedly supports European monetary union and the creation of a single EC currency. Jorge Simão, RTP Lisbon, for CNN World Report.
Imagine traveling down a crowded expressway at 70 miles an hour while still keeping a safe distance from the car in front of you, all without touching the gas pedal. Well, that's just one of the scenarios being tested by a European consortium hoping to market high-tech solutions to common driving problems. A look down the road now from the BBC.
Most British motorists drive too fast and too close, the so-called motorway madness, which causes our annual multiple pile-ups. But the combination of a powerful computer and a miniature radar from a smart bomb may be the answer. This is intelligent cruise control, just one of a series of new ideas being developed in the European car makers' cooperative Prometheus project. While the radar behind the Jaguar's number plate watches the car ahead, the computer maintains a constant and safe 1.8 seconds time interval, regardless of speed. It's strange keeping your feet off the pedals at 70 miles an hour, and stranger still, ignoring the car ahead's brake lights. But the system really comes into its own at slow speeds. Imagine this as a crowded motorway at rush hour, when you're having constantly to touch the accelerator and then the brake in an endless stop-and-go cycle. It's tiring and irritating, but in this car you just press a button and the computer does the rest. The system only works with an automatic car and costs well over £1,000, but although it's under test, it won't be available for 3 or 4 years.
The next stage that I see is that we have to obtain the inputs from a variety of normal drivers as to how they relate to the system and as to how the system should interact with them for normal road use.
Driver behavior is something being studied by Ford, who fitted a camera into this car to record blink rates and response times. The idea is to find out whether a computer could be programmed to detect early signs of fatigue, and then to suggest that you stop at the next service area. Another promising idea taken from the defense industry is the head-up display. This one shows speed, though it could just as easily be fuel state or information about the route. Its great value is that it's focused ahead of the car, making for easier night driving. But ultimately, the problem of bad visibility may be developed from Jaguar's experimental night vision car, which uses an advanced infrared camera. Initial tests have been promising, as these synchronized pictures showing the driver's normal eye view and the infrared scene demonstrate. As the car turns left, see how the pedestrians standing by the curb on the right are detected much earlier by the thermal camera. Infrared beams can also penetrate fog, smoke or dust, and they aren't affected by glare or reflections. Like all Prometheus project experiments, this one is far from complete. But by the end of the decade, they'll have made driving considerably easier and safer.
That report was from the BBC. Well, that's it for the CNN World Report and the International Hour this day. I'm Frank Sesno in Washington. Now, with a look at what's ahead on Early Prime, here's Lou Waters. Lou?
Right, Frank. Just ahead, could the president's health affect his chances for re-election? We'll ask a political analyst that question. Legal protection for battered women in Miami. Now just a phone call and a fax away. We'll tell you how that works. And look at how male infertility is sometimes neglected at the expense of couples trying to conceive. Join Cheryl Atkinson and me for Early Prime next year on CNN.
Coming up, Early Prime, followed by Showbiz Today, after a word from your local cable system, here on CNN.
Here's who can. The Crescent Man can.
At Crescent, our people make the difference. Friendly professionals ready to help you find the right car, truck, or van at the right price and provide reliable, convenient service after the sale. Crescent Chevrolet Geo, downtown for 60 years.
Friendly Crescent.